Right off the bat, I'll use two stats. Morgan Stanley forecasts that 45% of women ages 25 and 44 will be single by 2030. Also, multiple studies on the rules and patterns of attraction women apply on dating apps show us that when deciding to match, women reject up to 80% of presented male profiles. So without a doubt, everything around us has changed a lot. And anyone can agree that when it comes to interacting with women, what used to work for our fathers and grandfathers is obsolete in today's times, which make things far more confusing and complicated. So if you want to have a better understanding of how the ladies fall in love and when do they do it, join me in today's video as I dissect the minds of women and try to uncover what they really want in a partner. Stick around till the end, and I'll also share my very practical ways in which you can incorporate all the findings I'm about to reveal in this video. Plus, I'll offer you a research proven bonus concept that once you internalize, it will change your life in so many good ways. How do women actually fall in love has been a theme question I have been thinking about for a very long time, as with many other topics deriving from human behavior and psychology in general. Now, when it comes to understanding what women want in a partner, there's a lot of speculation, but not a lot of concrete answers. And I think that's because a lot of these wants remain unspoken, leaving us to wonder what really makes them tick. But understanding what women want is crucial in building healthy, fulfilling relationships. One of the biggest challenges we as men face when trying to understand what women want is that we're often given mixed signals. Women may say one thing but mean another, leaving men feeling confused and frustrated. And to make matters worse, there's a lot of misconception about what women want in relationships. For example, many men think all women want a guy who's rich and successful, but that's not entirely true. Others think that women want a guy who's super confident and assertive, but again, that's not the whole story. Another misconception is that women want a guy who's 6 feet tall, showing his six-pack abs, and that's going to sweep them off their feet, be the hero, and save the day. For those of you who want the TLDR version of all I'm about to say, this is the synopsis on female psychology. While Lois Lane tried obsessively to trick Superman into marrying her, she did eventually marry Clark Kent. Now, try to visualize this scene over and over again, and we'll return to it later in the video. I promise it will all make sense. For those of you who want the full dramatic version though, let's start discussing about the main psychological characteristics women rely on shortlisting and selecting their partners. It all starts with the fundamentally rooted concept of resource acquisition preference. My favorite researcher in the field of evolutionary psychology, Professor David Buss, concluded many fascinating studies spanning across multiple diverse cultures, revealing a consistent pattern. Women value ambition, industriousness, and financial prospects in potential mates. A man who possesses these qualities is interpreted as being a man who can provide, who can protect, who can create a stable and secure environment for a family to thrive. But why is this such a prevalent strategy, irrespective of race or culture, you might ask yourself? Well, it's because good mate choices can bring a bounty of reproductive benefits, such as physical protection, provisioning of resources for self and offsprings with downstream effects on genetic quality, for healthy immune functioning and longevity. Poor mate choices, on the other hand, can usher in a cascade of costs, such as lack of resources for self or offsprings, physical trauma or illnesses, sexually transmitted diseases, a DNA packed with some high mutation load, and eventually reputational damage and abandonment. These dramatic costs and benefits have imposed tremendous selection pressure over the last 6 million years of human evolution. And it's not just Professor Buss's research that supports this. Alan Feingold, in his 1994 meta-analysis of numerous studies, found that women consistently place greater emphasis on socioeconomic status and ambition in mate selection compared to men. But here's the crucial point, my brothers. Resource acquisition isn't just about the money. It's about competence. It's about a man's ability to navigate the world, to solve problems, to overcome challenges. It's also about his drive, his determination, his unwavering commitment to success. And these qualities, both on a deep psychological level and as anecdotal evidence, are very attractive to women, as they are the hallmarks of a man who's going places, a man who is worthy of their respect and a man who can eventually lead them. This fundamental survival strategy that females from all sexually reproductive species display for the preference of resource acquisition in their partners produced a particular psychological adaptation in the human females called hypergamy. A word often whispered in harsh tones, shrouded in fear and misunderstanding, hypergamy in its essence is the tendency in a woman to seek a partner of higher status or value, which, if you look at it from an evolutionary perspective, makes sense. Women burdened with the immense responsibility of caring and nurturing children have historically sought partners who could provide security and stability. Again, returning to Professor Bassett's research, women across cultures consistently prioritize a partner's resource acquisition capabilities. This translates into a preference for men who demonstrate ambition, industriousness, and financial prospects. Gilles Saint-Paul, a brilliant economist and mathematician, offers a compelling mathematical model of human distribution to explain this phenomenon in greater detail. He argues that hypergamy arises due to the differential reproductive costs between men and women. Women facing higher costs associated with a pregnancy and childbirth seek to compensate by partnering with men of higher socioeconomic status. This in turn leads to assortative mating where individuals try to pair on a minimum based on similar socioeconomic backgrounds. Findings in a Bertrand et al. Study from 2013 also corroborates the hypergamy theory, providing evidence for a greater marital instability and lower marital satisfaction in couples where the wife earns more than the husband. To further substantiate all of this, according to data from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, the marriage rate of women with less than a bachelor's degree is significantly higher than for men of equal education. Now, do you remember how I started the video? Morgan Stanley forecasts that 45% of women ages 25 and 44 will be single by 2030. The real-life result of Gilles Saint-Paul's distribution model is that women try to marry men who have a greater rank than themselves, but the consequence is that there will always be a mass of unmarried men at the bottom of the distribution of human capital and resources, and a mass of single women at the top of the distribution, colloquially called boss bait. These are the women continuously running their hamster wheel, asking themselves,
"Is my partner the best I can do? Am I settling for less? Can this one be better than what I have now? Isn't being single better than settling?"
But wait, do you remember what was the second data I introduced at the beginning of the video? Multiple studies on the rules and patterns of attraction women apply on dating apps show us that when deciding to match, women reject up to 80% of presented male profiles. But there's more. Only one profile out of 100 was liked by more than 80% of all women. That, my friends, is hypergamy on digital steroids. And in my opinion, it's also the #1 reason for the explosion in divorce rates throughout the world. Let me know in the comments, what do you think are the other major reasons behind the divorce pandemic in the last decade? And why not? Like the video. So 80% of women are vocally or silently pining for the 1% men, while on the other side of the spectrum, 80% of men silently stay single and ignore. But hypergamy isn't manifesting only on the fundamental survival mechanisms for securing resources, provisioning, and protection. Although in almost every socio-psychological conducted study it has been demonstrated that women are far more likely to judge a man based on his perceived status and income, Marcel Zedner and Claudia Mitura, in their insightful 2012 study, found that in societies with greater gender equality, as the emphasis on resource acquisition decreases, women's preferences for traits like physical attractiveness become more pronounced. But even as the emphasis on resource acquisition diminishes, it never truly disappears, even in societies with the highest pay gap parity, like the Scandinavian countries. In the resource-scarce societies or countries with very limited access to education and overall affluence, researchers repeatedly demonstrated that men set lower standards in terms of a potential partner's socioeconomic status than women, Whereas women set lower standards in terms of a potential partner's physical attractiveness than men. On the flip side, as Zentner showed in their studies, this means that when the basic survival mechanisms have been provided abundantly for, the women living in those affluent societies tend to favor potential partners who display cues for pleasant and symmetrical physical traits. A 2012 Saskia Kanter study out of Netherlands Tilburg University on the positive effects of perceived physical attraction on romantic interactions confirms the hypothesis that physical attraction has a positive relationship with romantic and social attraction, meaning that people have a higher chance of long-term relationships with someone at least as physically attractive as themselves, while later researchers also showed that partners who were similar in physical attractiveness found each other to be the most attractive. This opens the door for addressing the adaptations of hypergamy in women's sexual strategies, which are an intricate part of their mate selection process. As I have personally experienced it multiple instances before, women tend to remain sexually involved with a man in a monogamous fashion if they have an objective and at the same time subjective belief that their man's perceived values are the greatest they can secure for themselves. This is how women are wired to constantly evaluate their partners. A woman might have a very high-value man besides her in absolute terms, let's say in Alaska. But let's imagine if the same woman goes on a girls' trip to LA or Vegas for a week. She would most likely almost immediately have access to potential partners of higher perceived value that would otherwise be missing from her human capital pool in Alaska. And depending also on other contexts in her life, she could easily shift her sexual strategy accordingly to potentially secure a better partner deal. So depending on current realities in a woman's life, along with other socioeconomic factors, she can deploy one, two, or a combination of the following three strategies. For starters, she could stay sexually monogamous with her man when she's absolutely, objectively and subjectively convinced that her partner is the best she can do. This, my brother, by the way, is the best spot you can be in as a man. When your woman feels, thinks, and acts like you're a god. In this case, there is a huge opportunity cost she would have to pay in terms of risk associated to losing you if she engages in exploring possibilities with other uncertain and possibly less valuable partners. If she doesn't have a genuine maximal attraction for you, but she's perceiving you as a good long-term provider, and again, depending on where you are in your relationship and on other socioeconomic factors, such as already having children with you or her fertility window about to close, she could deploy a strategic pluralism tactic, otherwise known as dual mating strategy. One experiment that I'll quickly reference here concluded that between short-term and long-term relationships, women prioritized physical attractiveness for short-term mates, while they preferred males with traits that indicated they could be better caretakers when selecting for long-term relations. The experimenters used the following setup. Subjects were given an overall budget and they were asked to assign points to different traits when assessing potential short-term and long-term partners. For long-term mates, women gave more points to social and kindness traits, agreeing with results found in other studies suggesting that females prefer long-term mates who would provide resources and emotional security for them, as opposed to physically attractive mates. Women also prefer males who can offer them more financial security, as this would help them raise their offspring. It has also been observed in these studies that women's preferences for uncommitted sexual relationships with men displaying putative fitness cues increased during the high fertility phase of the menstrual cycle. I remember I was barely 23, 24 years old, just fresh out of university, and one summer I had a fling with a much older but very good-looking woman. I'd say she was probably in her 30s, late 30s, maybe 35 to 36 years old at the time. And as the weeks passed, we started seeing each other regularly and got along quite well. Besides the physical chemistry, we had also developed an interesting human connection. And it was 3 weeks in our interaction when she told me that she was in a long-term relationship that was not working well. I did not react in any way. I did not encourage her to act or not to act. I just basically stood there and listened, as I knew deep down that we were not going to end being together long term. So here I was one day, 2 or 3 weeks later, when she started telling me out of the blue that she had started thinking about having my baby. I kept my cool and went on to probe her thoughts, eventually finding all the details out. That woman was willing to have my baby without any other involvement from my side, without any other responsibilities or commitments coming from me. When I had asked what was the spark of her wanting this, she just told me that she felt a strong connection with me and that she had already started feeling that she was basically cheating on me with her boyfriend. Imagine this. I went on to ask her what would she tell her then boyfriend if he found out about this imagined pregnancy. And without any hesitation, she told me this. Listen to me. I would tell him it's his baby, but that we need to break up anyway because our relationship is dead. This is dual mating at its finest, my friends. A woman willing to have another man's child and make her man that she was about to dump anyway raise a child that wouldn't have been his. And this story, gentlemen, did not happen to me only once. By the way, let me know in the comments below, did you experience anything similar? I'm very, very curious. This last strategy I'm about to mention is the absolute worst a man can be in. It's when she's not even slightly attracted to you and your perceived mate value in her eyes is very low. This is when women deploy the so-called mate switching strategy. As formulated by Professor David Boss, women deploy this short-term mating strategy as an introduction vector to possibly new long-term relations with partners of higher mate value. Women mostly deploy this strategy when there are some unanticipated costs inflicted by one's mate, and the most common one is the arrival of a new and interested potential mate of sufficiently incremental value to offset the costs of the breakup. So, to put it all together, do you remember the story about Superman? Lois Lane is the perfect example of how a dual mating strategy can be effectively deployed. She tried to secure the alpha for the short-term thrill, excitement, and overall alphaness, only to end up marrying the secure, stable, and emotionally available Clark Kent. So the short and precise answer to the question raised by today's video is opportunistically. According to the research, women fall in love opportunistically, gentlemen. And anecdotally from my own experience, all the women that fell in love with me were the ones that I had dedicated the least attention to compared to the ones that I had previously chased. I'm curious, did you experiment this type of responsive behavior from women? Let me know. Make sure you let me know in the comment section. Now, a woman might have true, genuine feelings for you. Don't get me wrong. But let this sink in. Her feelings for you are not unconditional. When a woman falls in love, deep down beyond the realm of her conscious self, there is a transaction taking place. Her subconscious accepts to pay an opportunity cost when selecting who to fall in love with, and if the opportunity cost of replacing you becomes significantly lower compared to the perceived benefits of securing a new relationship, she will do it, my brothers, either in an overt manner by terminating the 7, 10, or 15 years relationship she had with you, or by covert means, going behind your back and monkey branching in another man's arms. Now that school is in recess and you have a high-level understanding on what goes behind the hood of a woman's consciousness and subconsciousness, I want to guide you through my simple ways in which I personally interact with women. You can start implementing these today, no matter if you're out on dates or just out socializing with women. Irrespective of your relationship stage, you can kickstart the attraction mechanisms by creating a tense physical connection. At all times during your interactions, maintain direct eye contact with her while displaying a relaxed, confident pose and a positive smile. This will communicate to her subconsciously that interacting with women is a natural occurrence to you, and that she can ease in the relaxed mood. During a date, for example, initiating subtle physical contact while again maintaining direct eye contact can work wonders. It shouldn't be anything too obvious or pathetic, and you shouldn't expect reciprocity from the beginning. These almost invisible gestures can deepen and open up your connection and set it up for more closeness. Second thing I always like to do is act like a gentleman. Again, it works well in every context in which you interact with women. I know a lot of disappointed men who come to the conclusion that women really like jerks, but based on my own experience, I can say that this is simply not true. While women do prefer assertive masculine energy, most women are looking for supportive, agreeable partners. Being a helpful, reliable person without being too forceful or blunt is what being a gentleman is truly about. For more on being a gentleman, don't overthink it, you'll kill it. Just apply the basic rules in the code of good manners, like greeting people with a smile, saying please and thank you, good table manners, respect personal space, and dress appropriately, and you should be just fine. Third thing I always do in any interaction with women is to create an enjoyable atmosphere. Who doesn't like a good laugh, especially when the jokes you say are carefully crafted to match the context or conversation? Lastly, here comes the bonus point I promised at the beginning of the video. Men who were high in self-esteem were predicted to choose more attractive dates than their less self-confident peers, according to a Houston 1973 study. So the goal nugget here is to focus on consistently bettering yourself, and as your version continuously evolves while you progress through life, your relations will follow the same path naturally and effortlessly. By the way, if you want to understand more about why women are getting wealthier and why men's financial dominance is really just a myth, be sure to watch this video right here. That's all I have for you today. Like the video if you found value in it, and consider sending it to more men who can benefit from this type of content.